Hello, I'm Stuart Craner, co-founder of Thinkers50. Welcome to our weekly LinkedIn live session, celebrating some of the brightest new stars in the world of management thinking. In January, we announced the Thinkers50 radar community for 2024. These are the upcoming management thinkers we believe individuals and organizations should be listening to. The 2024 list was our most eclectic and challenging yet. This year's radar is brought to you in partnership with Deloitte and features business thinkers from the worlds of fashion, retail, branding and communications, as well as statisticians, neuroscientists and platform practitioners from the Nordics to New Zealand and Asia to America. Over the next few weeks, we will be meeting some more of these fantastic thinkers in our weekly sessions. So we hope you can join us for some great conversations. As always, please let us know where you're joining us from and send in any comments, questions, observations at any time during the 45-minute session. Our guest today is Sophie Bacq. Sophie is Professor of Social Entrepreneurship and Coca-Cola Foundation Chair in Sustainable Development at IMD in Switzerland. As a globally recognized thought leader on social entrepreneurship and change, she investigates and theorizes about entrepreneurial action to solve intractable social and environmental problems at the individual, organizational and civic levels of analysis. Sophie has taught and conducted research on social entrepreneurship in Europe, the US and South Africa since 2006. At IMD, she leads the Social Entrepreneurship Initiative, which aims to inspire entrepreneurs, leaders, scholars, and organizations to change the system and to create and share new solutions for positive societal change. Sophie, welcome. Let's start at the beginning. What ignited your interest in social entrepreneurship in the first place?
Thank you, Stuart, and thanks for having me, and thanks for this first question. So, I have a background in entrepreneurship studies. I come from Belgium and I did my bachelor and master's degrees at UC Louvain, which is a French-speaking university there. And as I was really drawn to pursue my studies in entrepreneurship, but also get more exposure and experience to the world of education, I started a position in 2006, as you mentioned, as a teaching and research assistant. And so I taught strategy. I was the assistant of a professor in strategy, and I also got the luxurious choice of picking a dissertation topic. And my advisor, Frank Jensen, was really kind and actually very laissez-faire and said, you can pick whatever topic is of interest to you. You can go from VC to women, female entrepreneurship was really en vogue back then, or this new thing, social entrepreneurship. I was like, well, that sounds intriguing. So I guess you can call it a calling. I was intrigued by the combination of the adjective social, which to me refers to, the humanity that we all carry in us, and the opposition that was induced in terms of being social as opposed to, economic, and mixing that with entrepreneurship, which I had studied for 5 years already. And so we also say that in research, we do me-search. And it's true that I had done, as many of us on the call, I'm sure, lots of volunteering at Oxfam and Amnesty International. So I had this kind of social fiber in me, and I was ready to know more. Luckily, or not, in that year, the stack of paper that my advisor gave me was about that thick, which if you start a PhD, this is really nothing, right? It's not the thousands of pages that one would experience in other fields. So the field was really at the beginning, and has passionated me since then. So this is how I got started.
Have you ever thought you should have done research into venture capital? You don't feel obliged to answer that question, Sophie.
No regrets. Yeah, I'm delighted for the platform and the opportunity today, because it's such a vast field. You mentioned that the research I do, I've done at the individual level, looking at the drivers and what drives people to actually, be a bit crazier than everybody else, and not only start a venture with the associated risks, but also do that for the benefit of others, right? So looking at elements of empathy and compassion, and what are really the traits and the elements that may make these individuals different from traditional entrepreneurs. At the organizational level, you have all of these tensions that entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs in particular need to navigate between pursuing their mission and at the same time building a sustainable, viable business model. And so on the organizational level, maybe I haven't, studied VCs, but I think there's fascinating questions about the funding then. It allows me to just, maybe I want to study, personality traits or maybe funding issues for social entrepreneurs and social enterprises. And maybe more recently these days, looking at community and trying to take a broader view on what social entrepreneurs do. So yeah, I'm still at it.
So rewind a bit, Sophie. How do you define social entrepreneurship? Is there a commonly accepted definition these days? So I know it's been a matter of academic debate for a number of years.
That's right. Yes, I think there is consensus on the understanding of social entrepreneurship as the primary pursuit of a social or environmental goal by means of an entrepreneurial means, including commerce, creativity, innovation. So there is really two components to social entrepreneurship. It's the goal, the ends, that's going to be social or environmental, and the means that's going to be more traditional business commerce based.
How important is social entrepreneurship? Are there any numbers to tell us how much it contributes to the economies of the world, or how important it is?
This is a great question. There are numbers fresh off the press, brought to us by the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs, which is part of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, here in my new neighborhood, so to speak, in Switzerland, in Geneva. And so really grateful to the team that's been led by Francois Venici at the WEF, who managed to give us a size of the social entrepreneurship sector. We don't have trends because that's the first time I'm seeing these numbers, but the size is pretty significant. So a few numbers I jotted down in preparation for the call. There are about 10 million social enterprises worldwide. So, maybe it's smaller in significance compared to other kinds of social enterprises, but I don't think we want to talk about niche anymore. So 10 million social enterprises, half of them led by women. And so I think what's interesting here is that the way these enterprises are managed and then organized and governed are showing a bit more progress when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so on. So I think it's worthwhile mentioning that. Creating 200 million jobs, and that's important because entrepreneurship is always featured as a driver of economic progress or economic activity, job creation, and so social entrepreneurs do the same with the primary purpose that they pursue. So it can be, you can think of the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So it can be poverty related, water and sanitation, gender equality, education, life in the ocean, and so on. In terms of revenue generated, I think that's the one that can speak maybe to most who are listening to us and who are not in the social entrepreneurship space, but in traditional business. $2 trillion generated in revenue. And by comparison, that is twice larger than the advertising industry and larger than the apparel industry. So this speaks to also the definition I mentioned earlier. It's not just charity. It's doing good by running a viable business. And, it's hard. There's lots of failures like there is in entrepreneurship in general, but the surviving ones give us these numbers. I believe, top of my head, but I think that's correct, it contributes to 7% of the GDP worldwide. So
they're amazing numbers. So there's 10 million social enterprises worldwide, creating 200 million jobs, generating $2 trillion in revenue, and that equates to kind of 7% of global GDP.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm just kind of reiterating them because they're really important. Because they belie the kind of image of social entrepreneurship as being kind of peripheral.
Absolutely,
it's actually central to the economy, and that's totally these activities are kind of spread evenly throughout the world.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I would say, I don't know about evenly. They're spread out. So there is the manifestations of the phenomenon throughout the world. There is actually, I'm looking at currently for some of my research in progress at a data set of entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs who integrated an accelerator. And I was going to say, well, there are many issues in the South, global South, as some say, or developing world with social entrepreneurs, sometimes based in the North, in developed countries. But in this global data set that we're looking at, actually 96% of these entrepreneurs are incorporated where the issues that they're tackling is. So with that data set, we have 153 countries. So I don't know about evenness, but global phenomenon for sure.
And we're joined by people from throughout the world, suitably. Somebody from Sweden, people from India, Poland, Switzerland, strangely as well. Please send in your questions at any time. Frank from Switzerland, Frank Karlberg, says, how do social entrepreneurs measure success?
Mm-hmm. Please give a couple of examples. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great question. And I like the broadness of the question in the sense that one reality, an accepted fact, is that there is no one single metric to measure success, which is called impact in social entrepreneurship, as the issues vary broadly from one goal to another. You know, I cited homelessness, ocean life survival. You're going to have different kinds of impact in those issues, but also the context matters a lot. And so we no longer are in social entrepreneurship looking for one currency, so to speak, when it comes to success. So giving example is going to help me address the question. A first practice, which is the most widespread, which is due to the fact that this is the easiest to capture, is going to be counting how many lives have been bettered, how many lives have been saved, how many animals have been protected from extinction. So, and that's what we call outputs. So there is a framework that we use, which is called the theory of change, which actually encompasses 3 levels of success in terms of measurement. The first one is the output is exactly what I just said, is like how many of people have been affected, hopefully positively, by the social entrepreneurship initiative. Then there is the outcome, and the outcome is going to get more granular. What do we mean by bettering a life? Do we mean longer life expectancy? Do we mean better health, improved health, thanks to access to vaccines or other or prevention of malaria, or if you're just saying homelessness in the developed countries, how many lives saved? But then what do these individuals experience as a result of being helped by the social enterprise? So then you get at measures of well-being, and you get at more subjective measures, of perceptive measures of impact or success. Eventually, when we talk about impact in the theory of change framework, we usually think of quality of life. Has it been improved? And we think 10 years down the line. And so this is a great question, because you can imagine that outputs and outcomes are more more captured by social entrepreneurs and social enterprises than, the quality of life 10 years down the road, because it's hard to establish causality. You don't have the counterfactual. So there's a lot of challenges in measuring success. But I hope this addresses, I think, was Frank's question.
What about the relationship between social entrepreneurship and something like benefit corporations, B Corps?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they the same thing? Are B Corps social enterprises?
They can be, but not always. So they're definitely overlapping. The B Corp movement, I think they like to call it a movement, was launched by the B Lab in the early years. I would say 2010, somewhere like that, in the United States. So it's a nonprofit 501c3 in the US that launched this certification. So when you hear B Corps, you actually most probably are hearing about or thinking about or reading about a certified corporation that has the B Corp label. And the objective of the B Lab was to recognize and authenticate and actually certify the genuine efforts towards the people and the planet by for-profit organizations. So they're related. Why? Because that's something I haven't said yet, but social enterprises as organizations that are part of social entrepreneurship can be for-profit or non-profit, right? And there are different criteria to decide whether it's more beneficial for the mission to incorporate as a for-profit or non-profit. If you're a non-profit and the perception of your stakeholders, it's going to be is an easier sell that your mission is really at the core of what you do, and you may be generating income through trade and commerce. If you're a for-profit, knowing that the for-profit organizations really exist within the capitalist systems that we know, at least in many countries around the world, including the US and Switzerland, where I am now, who tells me that you're authentic and you're not just greenwashing, as we hear, or social washing? And so this certification really has made more clear to many stakeholders that the certified B Corps, whether they're social enterprises or not, are actually doing good when it comes to governance of the organization and diversity of their board, for instance, when it comes to workers' conditions and the way that their employees are treated and their well-being, when it comes to waste management. And so the B Lab has come up with a series of measures, the B Impact Assessment, that's the name, that these for-profits voluntarily get a score for, and are held accountable to by this independent third-party organization, which is the B Lab. And so I think, compared to to circle back and close on this question, I would say that there is likely more variance within the certified B Corps. Like, some organizations are not maybe primarily looking to address a social and environmental goal, but they're doing tremendous efforts that deserve recognition. So to me, it's all progress in the right direction, or at least, in a more social, inclusive, environmentally friendly direction.
You wrote recently, I read it, that social entrepreneurship is at a point of convergence.
That's right. That's right.
What do you mean by that? Could you expand on that?
Yes. Thank you. So this was part of my reflections as I hosted on IMG's campus the 20th Annual Social Entrepreneurship Conference, which is the largest academic gathering in its kind. I've been co-directing it with Jill Kickle since 2012. So we celebrated this year. It's a big year at IMD. And I was reflecting on taking stock and looking ahead and what I could share with the 150 participants that came to campus, mostly scholars, PhD students, and a couple of practitioners. And I've taught social entrepreneurship for many, many years at the undergrad level, MBA level, doctoral level as well. And I used to frame it more as a separate phenomenon that some entrepreneurs, some individuals in society, in our economies undertake for a particular, primary reason that's not going to be profit or economic financial returns. But more and more, to build on the B Corp answer, we see corporations acting towards more people-centered and planet-centered goals, whether that's out of compliance, especially in the EU, or whether that's out of reactions to stakeholder claims. Think of consumers, what they want. Think of employees. There is a lot of press about that. And so I really see now social entrepreneurship. I use my hands if you see. So I thought, social entrepreneurship is this little bubble here, and there is the economy there. Maybe they make it a little part of it. But no, I really think that social entrepreneurship can be seen as a phenomenon where the forces are converging, whether it is larger organizations that are trying to do good. They can learn from these business models that are highly innovative because they are inherently pursuing two goals, or whether this is corporations thinking more in terms of partnership and collaboration and collective action. We talk about systemic change and so on. It's not going to be one actor saving it all. And that was actually the claim for social entrepreneurship for many years. It's the silver bullet. Social entrepreneurs are heroes. They're going to save the world. Well, no, they've not. I mean, the progress is there, amazing, and I love teaching about it, both successes and failures. But at the same time, I really believe now, reflecting on almost 20 years of research on the topic, that social entrepreneurs are at the center. Maybe the movement is going to the center of what we're seeing now. If you think of an economy that's moving towards more fairness and environmental protection, and that corporations have a lot to gain in partnering with social entrepreneurs. They're going to give legitimacy to social entrepreneurs. Corporations can actually advance further if they partner with social entrepreneurs, as opposed to try to reinvent themselves in areas that they're not really trained or equipped to. And so that's the point of convergence. I'm excited about that, from the, how do you say, outskirts to the center of the circle.
What about the relationship between social entrepreneurship and corporations? Do you think corporations are now got a greater understanding of the power of social entrepreneurship? Are they getting closer together? You talked about them seeing opportunities for collaboration and partnership. Is that actually happening?
It is happening. On average, I'm not sure that corporations are, more and more aware, or sufficiently aware of what social entrepreneurship is about. I think that can also vary by country, right? So when I taught undergrads in the US, like a lot of them had taken social entrepreneurship classes in high school, right? So you think, they're in business school, they graduated from Indiana University, where I was, and then joining these corporations. So I think some corporations in some contexts may have members who are really aware of what it is. In Switzerland, I'm working and collaborating with the B Lab, and then there is a forum here at the University of Lausanne. There's a lot of actors that are working to spread the word more. So I think we can do more. Why? Because I really believe in this power of partnership. So to give you an example, and I just finished writing a case. It will need to be, polished before being published. I'm testing it with my MBAs in a few weeks on IKEA Belgium in particular, which wanted to streamline and be more intentional about its impact strategy. So IKEA Belgium had the budget, had good intention, sustainability budget, good intentions for doing good in the world, but a very scattered approach, meaning they were funding schools in different countries in Africa. They were, helping some associations, as we call them in Belgium, but without a clear guide for their impact activities. And so they decided to zero in on an issue that was highly prevalent in Belgium, and for which they could actually bring a solution that was aligned with their core business, which is furnishing. And so that problem that they identified was housing, adequate or fair housing of single parent families. Lots of families that are led by a single parent in Belgium don't have adequate housing, don't have enough sleeping rooms, sleep in shelters. And so they want you to address that. And to do that, they really engaged with social enterprises who actually knew best not only how to fix the problem. We shouldn't jump to quick fixes necessarily, but to connect with the community of people affected by the issue. And so they created coalitions with social enterprises and community members to come up with a more long-lasting solutions, where they moved from writing checks and making donations to the schools in Africa that I mentioned earlier, to actually provide in-kind donations, so furniture, really aligned with their business model, but also provide employee time, so volunteering time increased at IKEA Belgium. Employees could go and volunteer, not at a soup kitchen. You would think that is nothing to do, it's great, and we need those, but nothing to do with their business, but actually volunteering in building the IKEA furniture and then designing and making the rooms pretty and welcoming for a family when they come back home from school and work. And so this partnership really made a huge difference. And I think what's critical is not only the entrepreneur mindset and the thinking outside the box and very bottom up that entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs represent, but also this connection with the community. So social entrepreneurs, by definition, they start with the problem. They're animated by this force to address issues that really deeply bothers them in the world. And so they will have let's say deep connections with individuals who are experiencing the problem, deep in the sense that they know. We talk a lot about empathy in social entrepreneurship, and we talked about empathy earlier as I was telling you a bit about my research, but they will be able to really say, this person needs that. It's not about, it's not about painting the walls. It's actually more beds for people to sleep better at night. And so having this connection really makes a difference, because the good intentions are there. I see them every day when I have corporate leaders in the classroom. The good intentions are there. The means are there. There are budgets. There are even sustainability officers, right? It's more about directing those good intentions and means that really drives me to move forward and try to spread the word more and think about different models.
Frank Karlberg has a follow-up question. What specific actions can people who work for corporations take to help social entrepreneurs create 20 times more impact? I think you've kind of answered that, really, Sophie, in your previous answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thanks for engaging, Frank. So I think people in corporations, this group at IKEA Belgium, it wasn't, I mentioned the sustainability officer, but what I really liked and thought was innovative on the part of IKEA Belgium and document in the case study is also that when they the IKEA Belgium leadership had the intention of shifting the impact strategy. They created a team that was interdisciplinary and multi-functional, right? So it was the sustainability, but it was also representatives from people who are on the floor, because at IKEA, most employees or co-workers, as they call them, are actually working in the shops that some of you may have likely visited. And so I think this interdisciplinary angle is actually critical. I mean, it's back to my convergence. That's another point I didn't dig into earlier, but it's not just, social entrepreneurship is usually thought in business schools. It's entrepreneurship after all, but there's like amazing work in economic development and public administration policy making, where we see a lot of convergence, and we should talk more to each other. So that's on that side. So the interdisciplinarity, I think you can go further for 20 times your impact if you actually break down the silos, because these social issues, they gather people around, right? They're really good at being a point of convergence, to go back to that. The other thing, and here I'm less of an expert, but I'm aware of amazing work by my colleague Elisa Alt. She's at King's College in London, and her team about social intrapreneurship, or corporate social entrepreneurship, where they actually show that there are a lot of change makers in organizations that actually can do good inside the organization when it comes to issues as why are we always wasting that packaging when we have lunch meetings, and you're having lunch when you have your meeting, and you may be discarding a lot of plastic or paper whatsoever. So there's a lot of empowerment that I think can be done in larger corporations for employees to speak up and bring solutions to the internal problems, but also maybe the external problems as well. I would invite leaders to empower these change makers and give them the license to make a change, either internally or proposing some potential partnership, or setting up teams for making a change.
Yeah, IMD has recently created its social entrepreneurship initiative, which you lead. Can you tell us about that, Sophie? What's the objectives of the initiative?
Thank you, Stuart. The objective of the initiative is really to inspire. I mean, that's how we thought of it as a first. It's a newly created initiative to inspire not only students in our degree programs, like the MBA students. Some of them may start a social enterprise, or executive MBA students, but also inspire individuals in corporations to either or both, actually, even better, to use some of the principles that social entrepreneurs can teach us when it comes to governance of dual goals, when it comes to starting with the problem, holding off any preconceived solutions, holding off assumptions. I mean, these are really important skills that are not built in the most of the corporate routines. And to inspire scholars. So we would like the initiative to be a point of resources for future programs for corporate leaders, and eventually, hopefully, programs where leaders can meet social entrepreneurs, can meet people from the communities, and build together these solutions in a way that's collaborative and really play up to the strength of each actor. I think we'll go further if we think collaboratively, which again is very counterintuitive in a lot of the economics law and the laws of competitive competition and competitive advantage. But when it comes to social issues, we can change our mindset, and we'd like to inspire many to do that.
Timothy Cook has distilled things down very, very nicely. The forces are converging and aligning. How to go faster. I think that gets the nub of a lot of what you've talked about, Sophie, is that things appear to be heading in the direction of change, but how can they be accelerated?
I'm thinking of a few elements. I think I saw in the IKEA case, and I'm collecting more data. I'd like to have more of those cases to teach in the classroom. I think intention goes a long way, but with the caveat that intention without action is creating nothing, likely, right? So, but the intention, like having likely more than one person, but a group of individuals in organizations, or a coalition of a few people from a corporation, a social entrepreneur, a few people from the community, really carrying on this project and having the intention to do so, I think will go faster than waiting for incentive systems to change, or larger systems that drive our behaviors to change. So I really see in a lot of my work, I'm you may hear I'm very positive, but I'm also cognizant that there's many challenges. But humans connect in ways that is still magical in so many ways. And so having coalitions of actors from across sectors, corporations, social entrepreneurs, communities, and being intentional about bringing the work to fruition, I think it's critical. I mean, it's akin to volunteering in your, I'm looking at my village here, in your village, about, helping the elderly or doing a cleanup. Like, the intention is there. So I'd like to see more of that intention. The second thing I was going to say is measurement. Of course, you kind of become what you measure. So, measurements are tricky. It's a tricky question. There's a lot of variance across contexts and issues. But I think if we can really move the needle, many scholars, including at IMD, are working on that topic. I think we would make more progress, because we'd be able to measure and then convince better the stakeholders with whom we interact. So.
And the other area of your work, so if you just give us a brief insight into it, is you do work on civic wealth creation.
That's right.
Can you tell us what you mean by that, and what the work involves?
Yes, thanks for the question. Yeah, I just hinted at it because I think it's aligned with my last answer. So civic wealth is a new indicator for progress, or for positive societal impact, which is best captured at the community level. And so on that, I will add that lots of my work has been, as I mentioned, about the individuals, the organizations, until we realized, and this is work jointly done with my co-author Tom Lemkin, that the impact is not at the it's extra organizational. It's not within the organization for the most part. You're trying to help people, who have to live in the shelters because they don't have proper housing. That's the IKEA case I just mentioned. And so the community level is really critical. And with that, we think of civic wealth as the intellectual, material, affective resources, capacities, or capabilities of a segment of society. So it's not just the material resources. When I talked about improving lives and well-being, it's not just having more money in your pocket to put food on the table, which is critical, but effectively, are people better off mental health wise? Are they more educated? So a new indicator at the community level, or what we call the civic level. How do you reach it? Well, through the power of collaboration. And that's what I just explained earlier. So it's not only an entrepreneur who is going to reach high levels of civic wealth created. It's going to be an entrepreneur collaborating with the community. And there we have a lot of evidence from work on economic and community development, where there is no change or lasting change if the help is provided top down, without empathy and without understanding of the issue. So community engagement is critical. And the last stakeholder, so we have 3 stakeholder groups in the model, is what we call the regimes of support, but those who, in a nutshell, have influence and power. And these can be, philanthropies. They can provide funding, but they can also provide direction, like the IKEA Belgium case did. They can be corporations. And this is where I think philanthropists can continue doing the work, funding amazing social entrepreneurs who engage with the community. but universities have also a role to play. Lots of the institutions who have power and influence are invited to join the collaborative work and realize that, I mean, honestly, realistically, together we'll achieve more. It's not just, the power of collaboration is just not said lightly. I think this is where we'll do greater good and in a faster way, hopefully.
Are you optimistic that social enterprises are being better understood and their impact is being maximized?
I'm optimistic that social enterprises are better understood. Yes, because when I always cautiously teach it in the classroom, I assume my audience doesn't know much about it. And so most of the time I'm positively surprised. Not everyone may know about it, but there's 50% who's heard of it. So I think that's really good. And I think we're going in a direction of an upward trajectory for spreading the word. Maximizing, do social enterprises maximize or optimize their impact? No, and I think there is gaps in funding as well, where, for good reasons, what we call impact investors are foregoing some of the profits, return investment, financial return investment for impact return investment. But at the same time, we see patterns in certain kinds of social enterprises, those who can scale, get more money, and some social enterprises not being funded or being funded for the first 2 years, but it takes time to create change. And so I would love to see more investors who can be patient with their capital. But I understand the challenges, right? I think there are logics of decision making and behaviors for all the stakeholders involved. But I'd love to see more supportive social entrepreneurs by investors and other kinds of institutions I just mentioned.
We're out of time, Sophie. Where can people find out more about your work, and what should they be looking out for? Is there anything coming out soon?
Great question. So I think on LinkedIn, definitely, I post a lot of updates. The IMD website is pretty complete when it comes to future programs, when it comes to forthcoming publications. So this is where you should look at. I think if you type IMD in my name, you'll find my page and the initiative, and lots to be read there. And if not, contact me on LinkedIn. I can always send you work by email.
Timothy Cook says, start small, make a measurable impact. That's his top tip for the future.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Timothy. We appreciate you watching, appreciate all the comments and questions from people. I think it's worth ending with a summary of the numbers that Sophie quoted earlier, that there's 10 million social enterprises worldwide creating 200 million jobs and $2 trillion in revenue, and they constitute 7% of the world's GDP. So a massive and really interesting area, touching the very basic issues of capitalism, really, as well, and society.
Absolutely.
Sophie, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate the conversation and the insights. And thank you everyone from around the world who's joined us. Next week, we'll be joined by Stephanie LeBlanc-Godfrey from Google. So hope you can join us then. Thanks very much, Sophie, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.